Outsourcing tends to have a bad reputation as being low quality. Partner Hero's value-based approach raises the bar for the outsourcing industry by investing in employee empowerment and career growth, paying above-market salaries, and maintaining a focus on quality and performance. They're more than a service provider. They're also a thought partner for the startups they serve. It's simple. Brands that care about quality customer experience choose Partner Hero. They offer flexible terms and the ability to scale quickly, perfect for startups, with quality assurance baked into every program and offices around the world. So Partner Hero can provide truly global coverage. Outsourcing has long been available mainly to big businesses, but Partner Hero is challenging business as usual by bringing the benefits of outsourcing to businesses of all sizes with short, flexible contracts and fast ramp-up times. 10 years ago, when we were launching the Action Catalyst, we could have used a few extra hands to help us scale quickly, even if it was just for a short while. You can bet that with their expertise, fast onboarding, and core focus on quality, Partner Hero would have had our attention. If you're ready to bring in outside customer support help for your startup that feels like it's a part of an existing team, check out Partner Hero. Head over to partnerhero.com/Action Catalyst to book a free consultation with our solutions team. Mention you heard about Partner Hero from the Action Catalyst, and they'll even waive the setup fee. Now, on to the show.
From Nashville, Tennessee, Southwestern Family of Companies welcomes you to the Action Catalyst. Each week, we share insights and inspiration from movers and shakers in the world of business. Our goal is to help you increase your self-discipline, overcome procrastination, and help you to take action on all the things that really matter.
Well, today we're going to talk about something that has been an area of study for me and is a sensitive topic to a lot of people. Not something I've talked a ton about on the podcast. I've written some about it, but we're going to talk about money. And specifically, we're going to talk about greed, giving, and making money matter. And this is a little bit different of a format because I've got a lot to share on this, and then I do have a guest that I think you'll enjoy. But you know, what you convince yourself to be true about money will largely guide your relationship with money. And what you think about money will affect your ability to acquire it and to manage it properly. And there's lots of misconceptions and misconstrued ideas about money. Lots of them, and including the delineation between greed and abundance, which is the first part that I really just wanted to talk about here, because Webster's defines greed as a selfish and excessive desire for more of something, as in money, than is needed. A selfish and excessive desire for more of something, such as money, than is needed. And I flat out disagree with Webster's. I think that is a inaccurate and harmful actual definition about greed. Because while greed certainly is related to selfish desire, okay, I think that is for sure. I don't buy into the concept that greed has anything to do with excess or that it has to do with more than is needed. And here's why. Because who is to define what is needed? Right? Or how much exactly is excess? I mean, if you ask the average American, you say, hey, are you rich? Most of us would say, no, I'm not rich. Yet, according to the rest of the world, the large majority of the rest of the world, the average American is quite rich. We are rich, and we don't think of ourselves as rich because there's people who have more than us, but that's exactly the point. It's not a certain level at which point you have too much. So I think greed, instead, it has nothing to do really with how much of something you have. That's what we're going to talk about here, and you're going to hear from a guy who was broke, then became a major millionaire, then went broke again, and then has earned it all back. And we're not going to talk too much in specifics about that, but it's a guy who has a lot of money and he gives a lot, and he does it in a pretty cool way, and he ties it to business. So I hope you enjoy. His name's Cole Hatter. He's got a pretty cool story, and we'll get started just after this message.
This episode is sponsored by Southwestern Coaching. Southwestern Coaching has helped over 11,000 people increase their incomes by over 25% on average. As a successful salesperson, you know the importance of increasing your sales. But sometimes you might just need a little extra push and accountability to meet your goals and grow your business. Southwestern Coaching will help you increase your income through one-on-one sales and leadership coaching tailored specifically to your needs. Together, we will elevate sales. To schedule your free one-on-one business action planning session with a Southwestern coach, go to www.southwesternconsulting.com/action catalyst.
This is one interesting dude. His name is Cole Hatter, and we've become fast friends, really. I'm actually speaking at an event that he is putting on called Thrive, Make Money Matter, which we'll talk a little bit about. But the more I've gotten to know about Cole, the more I've just been kind of fascinated with him. He used to be a firefighter, and then he became this millionaire investor. And the thing that draws me the most to him is he seems to have this real deep-rooted passion about using business as a way to do good in the world and connecting business with philanthropy. And, he's an author and a speaker and has a big online following and all of that. But it's really that business philanthropy element that I was drawn to. And anyways, I just brought him on because I want to hear his story. And I think you'll love it too. So Cole, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's going to be great.
So tell me a little bit about, before we get into the business, philanthropy, because I think, people see you as this millionaire guy, investor, does a money conference and, helps people and all that stuff. But tell me a little bit about the story, before you had money. How did you get to that place?
Totally. So I was a firefighter, and I'll give you the 10,000-foot overview, and we can go as deep into any areas you want. But in high school, I did high school during the day and college at night. My senior year to get all my prerequisites done for my fire academy. Graduated high school, and at 19 years old, went right into my academy and was a firefighter. And I had my whole life figured out. Right at 19, I knew everything that was going to happen forever. And then at 21, I actually got in a car accident myself, where I was ejected out of the car on the freeway going about 80. I got super hurt. They had to shut the freeway down in both directions and life flight me in a helicopter to the hospital because they didn't think I'd survive. And I obviously survived, but I was in a wheelchair for a while. I had to learn how to walk again. I had a traumatic brain injury. And so immediately following that accident, firefighting looked like it was out because I wasn't physically capable of even feeding myself, much less being a firefighter. And I had to move back in with my mom and dad at 21 to literally be hand-fed and cared for. And so it was in that season of in a wheelchair figuring out what I would do next that I got a lot of advice from friends, parents, and distant relatives that I should go back to school, get a degree, and go get a job in the corporate setting. And although the corporate environment's a good fit for some, it wasn't ever what I wanted to do. So I said, I need to figure out how to make money on my own while I heal so that someday if I'm physically capable, I can go back to firefighting. And so I'll just do something in the meantime, entrepreneurial to pay my bills. And that was the birth of my entrepreneurial career. I actually first started in real estate and did well, then lost it all and did well again. But
tell me about that journey. So you just went through like a lightning storm through a pretty challenging season. I mean, you're this, young strapping guy, your whole future ahead of you. Then you're in a wheelchair living with your parents. You transition and then, so tell me a little bit about real estate and then how you made your transition in and out of that.
Yeah. So again, and you are right. I'm trying to be as brief as possible, but that was a rough accident. And what I didn't cover is that others didn't survive. And so I had the grief of losing others and the guilt of being a survivor. And so plus all the physical injuries and all that mess. So I was in kind of a rough spot for a while. So I do want your audience to know it's not like I just bounced back like nothing happened. It was the ugliest season of my life for about 6 months. And then I slowly started recovering. And so in that recovery, I put a lot of emphasis and enthusiasm into real estate. It was 2005 at this point. The accident was in 2004. And so now spring 2005, I started a real estate business, and I live in Southern California. And in 2005, it was exploding. My strategy was buy a house, count to 10 and sell it and double my money. And I thought I'd hit the lotto, man. I asked my dad to be my business partner. And I remember talking to my dad and laughing with him one day. We had just closed a deal, probably made 50, 60 grand. And as a firefighter, I was making making $42,000 a year. And I remember talking to my dad, like, dude, why does anyone ever even get a job? That blows my mind. Why doesn't everyone just do this? Well, 2007 turned into 2008 and the recession happened, real estate collapsed, and I figured out pretty quickly that I was nothing special. I was just in the right place at the right time, made a killing in real estate, and then watched it all go. And wasn't quite as dramatic as like bankruptcies and foreclosures, but I sold everything I owned in a fire sale to lower my overhead down to virtually nothing. And and it was cool. From 22 till 25, I was making great money, multiple six figures a year. I even had a few six-figure months every now and then. And so in my early 20s, it was fun, but I did like most 20-year-olds would, making that type of money. And I bought Escalades. I think I'd bought 3 Escalades by my 25th birthday. Rims, TVs, wakeboard boats, the whole thing it's just nuts. And in that season from about 2008 to 2011 of just scraping by, barely making it, I looked back on that season of just, oodles of cash and what I did with it. And now that it was gone, I had nothing to show for it. I had fun memories and great pictures, but there was no evidence and there was nothing that I did that actually mattered with that. And I said, that's a little bit disappointing that all of that wealth and success is just a conversation or a story to tell, and there's nothing left of it. And so came back. Actually, there's a brief story. I moved to Mexico for 7 months of 2010 and 11 and worked full time with a nonprofit. I completely turned my back on business and everything, and I was just a philanthropist. And I saw what little bit of money I had left, how far it could go. I was in a very, very poor part of Mexico, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go back to America. And I'm going to see how much money I can make, not to go buy crap again, but to see what I can make my money do. Because this is fun. Like having Ferraris and all that was great, but literally feeding a hungry child is better. And, I've got an extra $20 and I can feed a family. But what if I had an extra $200,000? I could feed the city. And so I became infatuated with the idea of doing well in business to do well for others. And so moved back to America in February of 2011, restarted my business in April of 2011, and have gone on to make millions of dollars. And this time I'm doing it differently. I'm still enjoying life. I'm, recording this from my home, which is a beautiful home in Southern California. I have great cars and all of that. But that's not where I find my rewards in life. It's how I make my money matter. And so those are the 2 seasons of business. Made it all, spent it all, lost it all. Came back, made 10 times more than I ever have. And now I'm actually doing things where, heaven forbid, I lost all my money again tomorrow, there would be evidence of things that happened that mattered with what I did with the resources I had when I had them.
And this is going to be this is I think is such a great, line, is that Ferraris are great, but feeding kids is better. I
Totally.
think that is awesome. And anybody who's had any mature person who is not experiencing material goods for the first time, but has had them for a while, it seems like they quickly, or sometimes not so quickly, but they eventually come to this place where they realize the same thing you did, that, you think that the house, the cars, the trips, the whatever is going to bring you the fulfillment, but it's really not. And so talk about, to me, like, when do you feel like you really realized that? Was that in Mexico? Was that when you had the realization that that's not the stuff that really matters?
Yes, it was in Mexico. It was actually, I remember the date. It was November 7th, 2010 that it hit me. Yeah, super specific. Well, because there's a lot that happened that day. But, you just touched on something that I think is important to expand on, because you just said something important. Sometimes people will tell me, well, Cole, it's easy for you to live like you live now because you have the money. Like, it's always the quote unquote rich people. They're like, oh, money doesn't buy happiness. But then anyone who doesn't have money is like, screw you, I need it. But I came to this realization in my brokest moment. So that's important to say, that I had money, then I lost it all, and then I made it all back. And it's when I had none that I realized that I should be using my money to make a bigger difference in the world. So I know that cliche, money doesn't buy happiness, and only rich people say that because people who don't have money want it. But it's important at least to point out that I had the realization of what money should be used for when I had none of it, not when I'm so rich, I'm Bill Gates, I'll just give it all away because I have so much. That wasn't me. It was when I was literally like starving in Mexico that I realized what money was for. So you just touched on that. And
I want to one thing that you said too, because I think
I write a fair bit about money and some of the misconceptions that people have about money. I think in terms of like, well, if you have money, you're evil, and that money isn't everything. But you made an important distinction there, where you said, well, you can do a lot of good with $20, but you can do more potentially with 20,000 or with 200,000. So can you talk about that mindset a little bit?
Yeah, totally. And so, back to being in Mexico, I sold everything I had and moved down there, and there was a lot to do with that. It was still some of the baggage I carried from losing those in the accidents I was in, and I broke up with a girlfriend who at the time was just a girlfriend, who's now my wife, by the way. I got her back. Yeah, so married her. But while we were dating, she actually broke up with me because nothing I did wrong. She just knew I was struggling. I had emotional baggage still from the accidents and everything else. So she broke up with me and said, go figure yourself out. And I moved to Mexico. I sold everything I had, which wasn't a lot, and lived off of my savings and made it for 7 months. And I had a Mexican roommate, and he was a part of the nonprofit that I worked for. And on staff, they would feed you, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was included in being on staff. And there would be times where he and I were working with the homeless or doing whatever one of the projects was that the nonprofit was supposed to be doing. And we would get back to the base where the nonprofit was based after they had already served dinner. And I would see his face and his expression just drop, because he now knows he wasn't eating until tomorrow, because being a Mexican national, not having a job and working full time for the staff, he didn't have enough money to feed himself. And how I would just go to the local taco stand with him and $2-3 feed him. And how, just because I love this guy, his name is Walter, I still am very close to him. We've become lifelong friends, but how a few bucks could feed him. And then the same thing, I ended up accidentally starting an orphanage when I was down there, which I still have my orphanage to this day. And when I would go and visit the kids, we were taking care of 23 kids, I'd pull over at like a fruit stand and spend $40 and completely fill my car with fruits and veggies and show up and be able to give these kids fruit and vegetables that would last them a week off like $20. And another thing that we were doing, they play soccer down there, what they call football, on cement. It's a little different than America, but they do like basketball court style, like indoor soccer with walls on a very much smaller I don't know what you'd call it, field, I guess, even though it's cement. And one of the things a nonprofit wanted to do was lay the cement to provide a safe place for the local kids who are too poor to be able to play soccer. And to lay that cement was like $1,200. And I went back to America and sold my goose down couches that I'd picked up at 23, because, I needed those, that I left in a storage unit, brought that back down there and was able to fund that cement that to this day, thousands of kids get to play on every year in a safe environment that's on the campus of this base. And it's like, holy cow, like a few dollars can feed my roommate, $20 can feed my orphans, $1,000 can provide a safe place for kids to play. Like, this is freaking awesome. I want to go back to America so that I don't ever have to worry about money again. I'm going to kill it in business. And of course, I'm not going to live in poverty and be some martyr, but I'm going to make what I can do for others the point and not what I can do for myself. And I don't know that this is something that people just wake up one morning and decide. I was in it. Like, I was watching my orphans starve. And so one of the things I encourage people to do if they want to see what it feels like to make their money matter is, if you're contributing to like the Red Cross, continue to do so. Great organization. But writing a check and putting it in the mailbox or going online and donating, you don't get to see what your money's doing. There's no connection to it. So I'm not encouraging you to stop donating by any means, but I would encourage you to find another way to personally see how your money matters. An easy way for anybody listening to this in any city you live in. Go to the grocery store and buy some non-perishables and some toiletries for 5 people. I'm talking, like those little toothbrush, toothpaste, socks, deodorant, stuff like that, and then some food, and put it in 5 different bags and go to where homeless people are and go give it to them. But instead of just handing it off and wishing them the best of luck, spend 10, 20, 30 minutes in conversation with them to get to know them, and then give them that little bag you have prepared and see how now your money matters for others. And I promise you, you're going to start to get the bigger picture. And then it's just a matter of, okay, how much and how big can you do that? And, there's so much information out there. Tony Robbins says the secret to living is giving. There's no secret that some of the smartest, wealthiest people in the world are infatuated with giving back, because it's literally a high or an emotional rush of caring for people, which I believe no matter who you are, it's in our DNA to want to care for others. And so That was a long answer to your question, but that's kind of the birth of it all was just seeing how a few dollars for me could make a massive impact for others.
And you think so? How realistic do you think? Well, here's just more of an opinion question. There's a lot to be said. It's a biblical concept of not, that giving when done in the right way is often it's really a private matter, right? It's not it's not so much broadcasting to everybody like, here's what I'm giving, but to experience in the way that you're talking about the value and the benefit of the gift of what that gift means to somebody and seeing the impact of that. So when you move to the business conversation, do you think it should be, this is really just an opinion. Like, do you think that it should be a part of a business to give, or should it just be more of the individuals inside of that business that give? Because if a business is giving money and they're not broadcasting it publicly, then it's like the business is spending money that people don't know about. If they are broadcasting it, then it's like it kind of, isn't so much like in the way of giving. What's your opinion on that? Do you think it's individuals that give, or companies, or both, or?
So I have strong feelings on this, and it's interesting that you bring this up. This is actually one of the conversations Gary Vaynerchuk and I had on stage at Thrive last year. And here's my thoughts. You talked about biblical concept. I respect everyone can have their own belief system. I'm a Christian. I read the Bible. It says, give with your right hand without your left hand knowing. And, if you do things only to be seen by others, then it doesn't really count. You're just boasting, right? And so there's something to be said about that. And privately, my wife and I give and tithe and do what we do. Very privately, my own family members don't know what my wife and I do, and that is nothing I would ever broadcast for that reason. Not just because I'm trying to get points with God, but because my wife Sonia, and I aren't trying to publicly demonstrate with our own personal finances what giving looks like or tithing to be like, hey, look at us, we're perfect people. So I think that everyone should privately, quietly, regardless of religious context or belief systems, we shouldn't all just give as a gimmick to be like, hey, look at me, I'm Santa Claus. We should just give because you should, because it's the right thing to do, and to just know, regardless if you believe in God or not, like, you can call it karma or you can call it the universe. It will respond, right? That if you are being generous, it comes back to you, regardless if you believe that there's God or not. So I want to just acknowledge that yes, absolutely, I'm a huge fan of privately giving. I do that, and those are, I have, my wife and I, just so you know, have a 3-ring binder that we keep private in our bedroom, in our closet, of the different stories and the people who we impact. Nobody gets to see that, not even my own parents. So I believe in that. But let's talk about the business aspect. I'll use a great example of Tom's Shoes. Blake Mikowski, he founded Tom's Shoes. And if anyone hasn't heard of that company, for every pair of shoes you sell, they give a pair of shoes away. It's in their business model. It's in their brand, right? And so some could say, oh, well, look at him. He's just doing it to be seen by others. No. I don't see it like that at all. It's part of the business model, and he's making a huge impact in the world while he's making money. Now, last year, it was said that he's worth personally over $300 million. What Blake, the founder of Tom's, does with that $300 million is his own right, and what he donates out of generosity, I would encourage him to keep that private. So the business of Tom's very publicly gives, but the proceeds that the founder gets, I would, if I were him, very privately give, if that makes sense. And so I think, to answer your question, yes, businesses should give, and there's so much Consumer Reports on this. I mean, there was a study done where over 80% of consumers said that they would stop buying their name brands like Nike and go and buy shoes like Tom's to know that there's some social cause or impact. 80% of consumers said that. And so if you can figure out a give element within your business model, there are statistics that say you'll do better in business, and you get to be rewarded in knowing that when you have quarterly record-breaking, quarters, not only did you make more money than ever, you made a bigger impact. Now what you're paying yourself, whether it's salary or dividends or however you're compensating yourself, what you do with your resources, I think should be private. So the long answer is both. And don't just jump on the bandwagon of having a for-purpose business as just some gimmick like, hey, everyone look at me. If you buy a sweater, I'll give yarn away to kittens or whatever, right? People will see through that. It's just very simple to have a business that creates a social impact as part of the business model publicly to set the example and the standard for everyone else around them. And then what you do with your own personal finances, I strongly believe you should keep private. So that's kind of my thoughts around it.
Interesting. Well, I definitely think people will see through it, and it's it's one of those things I very much believe. Obviously, just because I'm a believer and a Bible reader and Jesus follower and all that. That I believe very much in what it says. The bummer is that I think there's a healthy component of talking about the power of giving and the importance of giving, and because a lot of the world's biggest givers do it so privately, I think people don't realize how much generosity there is in the world and how it is okay to give. And I kind of like this separation you're talking about here with the company making the social impact and being very open about that. And Tom's is certainly the textbook case study, if you will.
Well, so while we're talking about the Bible, so is the church. You look at any church and they have their outreach projects where they are taking their congregation's tithes and they're adding it up and they're funding missions, they're funding initiatives, they're sending people to other countries, and the church is publicly saying, look where we're spending our money, not as a boastful or bragging way, but as if this is what the church is for. And then the pastor isn't talking about what he or she are doing with their finances. I mean, this is literally an economic model that the churches follow. So if you are a member of any church, your church is spending its money in ways to, they're feeding the hungry, they're feeding the homeless, they're doing stuff with their finances publicly. But at the same time, the actual people running the church, the deacons, the bishops, the whatever it is, depending on the hierarchy of whatever church you participate in, they privately are, I would imagine, tithing and giving and doing things that matter too. So it's no different than the churches. If anybody's struggling with figuring that out, it's, hey, my church business model is we fund missions, and then as a pastor, I do stuff too privately, and my business publicly gives back in these ways, and I privately as the CEO give privately. And so it's not that complicated. You just got to know to separate the two.
So talk to me really quick about Thrive. Why did you create Thrive? What is it? How do people, connect with you on it?
Thrive is exactly what we've been talking about on this call. It's getting people like some of the best thought leaders and some of the best business entrepreneurs, CEO, execs, whatever, together for 3 days to teach the audience how to freaking kill it in business. To the actual tangible, my mentor, Than Merrill, is going to be there, and he's going to teach how to scale a business, how to go from being a solopreneur to hiring people for the first time and what top grading looks like. So from the success principle standpoint to the actual tangible, do this, this, and this, showing our audience how to freaking kill it in business today, while having the whole conversation being around what you and I have talked about. Hey, listen, now that we're showing you how to make millions of dollars, don't just go be some capitalist consumer. Go out there and be a philanthropic entrepreneur in your own way, whatever that looks like for you. I certainly wouldn't assume to tell people what to do with their money, but I will very proudly say that if you make your money matter, which is a theme of Thrive, you'll find more reward personally, spiritually, physically, emotionally than anything else you could be spending your money on. And so for 3 days, we're going to get together in October in San Diego, and we have 23 speakers now. So it's going to be awesome. All one stage, no breakouts. So everyone gets to see everyone talk. And it's just going to be 3 days of powerful content and really teaching the entrepreneurs of today what the consumers are asking for. Hey, I honestly believe that fast forward 10, 15 years, consumers aren't going to tolerate people who just make money for money's sake anymore. There's more and more of these Toms popping up everywhere. And eventually, I'm a millennial, and even the generation after me, whatever they're called, are almost becoming intolerant of people like, I'm going to use Nike. They're a great organization. Nothing wrong with Nike, and they're generous. They donate. But just a business model that's just out there to make money, they're not going to tolerate it anymore. And those companies are either going to have to adapt or go out of business like Blockbuster did when they didn't adapt like Netflix did. And so this is just, if you want to get off the philanthropic topic and just talk about how to succeed and stay in business, this is an important conversation to be around. So that essentially is what Thrive is. And you said, how can people hear about it? Just go to attendthrive.com. And website's attendthrive.com. It's in San Diego this October. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. And in congruent alignment with what we're talking about, the proceeds of the Thrive event go to support Pencils of Promise.
And yeah, Adam Braun is the founder of Pencils of Promise. He's a good friend of mine. And so to put my money literally where my mouth is, the event of Thrive is exactly what we've been talking about. No speakers are selling anything. It's not some big pitch fest where I go off and make $1 million. It's just heavy content. And like you said, the proceeds go to Pencils of Promise, which is an organization that builds schools for children in third world countries who have no access to education. So it's a great cause. I know the company well, and or the company. I know the nonprofit well, and they're a great cause, and so I'm happy to support them.
So I have one last question for you, and we're running out of time here, but we'll put a link to attendthrive.com and all of that in the show notes, and you can check that out. But on the topic of giving, Mr. Cole, what is the most generous gift that somebody has ever given you? Not your wife. What do you think is the most generous gift? And not your parents, but somebody where they have just undeservedly or just for whatever reason, somebody gave you time or money or something. And I didn't prepare you for this, so you're on the spot.
Well, it's funny that so first I was going to say my wife giving me my daughters, and you killed that one. Then I was going to talk about some of the belief systems that my parents gave me, and you killed that one too. So moving down, so it sounds like something tangible, something that someone's actually given me. Okay, so
or maybe not the most, just one, because you don't have a lot of time to prepare. So just give me one.
No. I've got it. So if we're talking about straight up monetary, I said I sold everything I had to go to Mexico, but it still wasn't enough. And Mexico, we didn't have time to dive deep into it, but it's where my whole life changed. I went down there, one person, I came back an entirely different human being. And a couple, a husband, wife, who were kind of extended friends, saw where I was and why I needed to be there. And one day took me out to Starbucks and wrote a check that completely covered the duration of my time in Mexico. Unsolicited. They just felt it on their hearts, called me. I met them in San Diego. They drove from Orange County down to San Diego. So I came back across the border. They met me there and said, Cole, we just know you need to be where you are. And we want to fund the rest of you being down there. Because what's interesting about being on staff at a nonprofit, you actually have to pay to work there, which is the exact opposite of everything else. I pay staff fees to then work for them 40 hours a week. And those aren't cheap. And so I think that was one of the best gifts someone has ever given me. It was when I was the brokest of my adult life I'd ever been. And it let me stay in the environment that completely crafted who I am today. And if they didn't feel called to do that and then follow through and write that check, who knows? My time in Mexico would have been cut short financially, and I don't know that I would have gotten the perspective or the impact that Mexico had on my life. And so I think that that's probably, just off the cuff, one of the greatest gifts anyone's ever given me.
Wow. I love that. What a great example of multiplying impact. And making a difference. Well, Cole Hatter is his name. Make Money Matter is the message. Attendthrive.com is the site where you can come see Cole and hang out together. If you're interested in San Diego, it's October 2016 is when the event's coming up. And Cole, I just appreciate you, man, and keep preaching and keep helping rich people be more generous and helping people who are not rich yet to become rich so they can be more generous. I love it.
Right on. I like how that sounds.
What a cool and unique story I think that Cole has. And, it's tricky with money because I think it's one of those things where it's like we should give, but you don't hear people talking about giving a lot because, at least the Bible instructs us that you should sort of do that privately. And so there's not a lot of conversation about it. And then it's one of those things that I think wealthy families talk a lot about money around the dinner table and at family gatherings. And it's a part of like what they discuss is doing business and buying businesses and investing. But in families that have less money, they have less financial education, and it's naturally less a topic of conversation other than maybe complaining about bills and stuff. But in terms of how you make money and manage money is less frequent of a conversation, and certainly less talk about giving because, at least in my life, I can tell you that I really struggled with giving for a long time. I mean, at least when I was first starting out as a professional. And I think a lot of it wasn't because I didn't want to give. It a lot of times was more I felt like I didn't have enough to give, and I didn't it took me a long time to learn and realize that actually giving isn't about, how much you have or don't have, but I think giving is a demonstration of your power over money. It's one example of how you're letting go of your emotional attachment to money. You're trusting this money to go to good work, or, if you're a person of faith, you're trusting God by giving it, back to Him, and trusting that you will still be provided for, is that Matthew verse that I shared earlier. But even if you're not a believer, I think we struggle with the idea of giving because, I don't have enough because there's all these things that I want. But one of the things about wealthy people is they seem to realize that actually giving is a part of acquiring. The sooner you develop the ability to give, the sooner you develop the kind of emotional detachment from money that is the prerequisite attitude for acquiring lots of money, because you start to see it as a tool and less of this sort of deep thing for survival. And so I think that's sort of interesting. And we did a study, right, at Southwestern Consulting in the Center for the Study of Self-Discipline, actually, which is a formal entity that we have that we've used to conduct certain studies. And one of our studies found that 70% of people admit to giving less than 10% of their income. There were 3,500 people that were in the survey, so 70% of people admit to giving less than 10%. It was an anonymous survey, but it kind of leaves you wondering, why do we have such a hard time giving? And certainly there's that piece of feeling like I don't have enough, but really that's more of a faith issue, right? It's feeling like, well, if I give what I have, then who's going to take care of me? And that's a real faith issue. And people who give abundantly, they don't give out of extraordinary excess, and they don't give out of an expectation of receiving something in return, and they don't give out of obligation. The most generous givers simply give out of thankfulness for every single thing that's been given to them.
Well, that about wraps up the Action Catalyst podcast for this week. If you haven't yet, please log in to whatever your favorite medium is to listen to the show, and both rate this podcast and leave a comment, as that really helps us out.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and screenshot this episode to share with your friends on social media. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst, and subscribe to our video podcast on YouTube. Thanks for listening.